There we go. All right. So welcome. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Appreciate it. Hey, Julie. Good morning. So if you mute yourself just for now, we'll do a little bit of introductions. We did a little bit of that to begin with, but we'll go around again and say everybody's name in a minute. But why don't we just take a minute to just turn our attention to movement. Continuum class or breathing class. And so the biggest initiator of movement is breath. So if you just take a few moments, we'll do about 3 minutes here of turning your attention to the movement of breath and its relationship to the movement of the body. Those two things go hand in hand. As you breathe in, your body changes shape. And as you breathe out, your body changes shape again. So just follow those changes of shape and pressure and movement just for 3 minutes here. Eyes closed or open, your choice, and your choice to do this exploration or not. Let yourself follow any movement that you feel is comfortable right now. You want to stretch, rock yourself a little bit. Breath is moving you, so let yourself be moved. It doesn't require for you to sit still. All right, and when you feel like you're ready, just let your eyes drift open. Great. All right, so I thought we'd start by just taking a few minutes for introductions. I'm curious about, some of us have our names, most of us actually have our names up on there. I think everybody does, except one. where you are right now, and really what matters to you most right now, with what's going on in the world, the virus and your life, and any particular concern you have around your breathing and your breathing body at the moment, so that I can take a note and maybe speak directly to something that's in your consciousness to want to know more about. So I'll just say a little bit myself this morning. It's, I find the phenomenon of breath infinitely interesting, obviously, born with a difficulty in breathing. So given a life's destiny to that. And I just noticed myself this morning, I had all kinds of thoughts about, being a teacher and doing the best job I possibly can do and whatnot, all those little anxieties. And I just turned to my ally breath and I said, what do you want me to teach? So it immediately sent me what it feels like is the most important message for me to deliver to you today, which is what I will do, and using Continuum to enhance that message. So I'm getting myself out of the way in my own anxieties of being on screen and whatnot, even though they still might be here, but I'll just breathe with them. So these messages of today are going to be the messages from breath that it feels it's the most important for you to know. So I look forward to teaching you. So thank you. So I'm going to name who goes next, because my screen is the one that I can see who's in what order. So I'm going to start right at the top. Beverly, you want to say hello? You have to unmute yourself when you do that.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm thrilled to be here with Continuum people and Robert and the breath, because I've gotten to study with Robert in this fascinating arena. Learning and connecting with people, especially around body and healing, is just a really important resource in this time.
Mm-hmm.
And my breath, I'm thrilled with some of the breakthroughs in breath, like an understanding of the startle reflex that began at birth, and some continuum ways of opening up the back of the diaphragm and having a fuller breath. It's thrilling.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Mm-hmm. Melissa.
Yeah, so I haven't done a lot of aerobic activity for a long time. Just recently I started doing interval training, and I can feel after a month that my lungs are opening up. And so this idea of really getting into making air contact with more surface area of my lungs is very appealing to me. And, kind of waking up that capacity. For me, this time period's been very lonely and isolated. I live in a beautiful area, so I have a lot of outside of me beauty. It's more in my interpersonal life, but I'm working, so it's I'm not in fear or anything like that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And you're in Maryland, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
And forgive me, Ireland, but I really keep losing how to pronounce your name. So give it to us again, okay?
Yeah, that's not my name. Anyway, Aoife is my name.
Aoife.
Yeah.
Great.
So ignore the writing there. I've been struggling with the breath the last few weeks because I think I might have some form of COVID. I don't know, because they wouldn't test me, but I might get a test next week because they're changing the criteria about it. Anyway, yeah, I'm struggling a bit today. And it's been coming and going the last few weeks, so it's really frustrating because I felt really well for a couple of days. So yeah, I'm going through all sorts of emotions of feeling very relaxed, thinking I'm fine, and then getting very freaked out. And I'm glad I found you because your workshop's been very helpful the last few weeks. So yeah, it's a bit of a disconcerting time for me. I mean, I'm surrounded by family and that's all lovely, but I want this to shift and move away and just be able to breathe normally. you know, you don't know what you have until it's gone and all of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it's it's a bit of a scary time.
Okay. And say your name one more time.
Aoife.
Aoife.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Kathleen in Tucson, Arizona. Can you unmute, Kathleen? Or I will do it for you, I think.
Alrighty.
There you
Hi,
go.
everybody. I just finished working at a small local hospital, and yeah, I obviously have some I'll say technical questions about why they're trying to do certain things with folks. You know, proning is one concept that they're talking about, helping people.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought it was to lie prone to help your breathing, but apparently that's just a question. If you have any ideas about that, I'd be interested in exploring again the diaphragm and the back of the body as well, just the shoulder blade area, and just that concept of being more vertical. I find as I'm getting older that there's definitely been more kyphosis with me, and I'm realizing that when I go into that posture, then obviously I'm not fully able to inhale and expand as much. So those are just a couple of things. I'm
When you're in
doing
the
fine.
proning position, when you're on prone, when you can't
No, just
in the vertical.
Just
In
that.
vertical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, got furloughed last Friday, so off until July 11th. So still doing lymphatic work, and anyway, glad to see you, everybody as well.
Thanks for coming. Anne?
Hi. Your configuration is different than mine.
And different than everybody's, right?
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for doing this, Robert.
Sure.
Let's see, you asked for biggest concerns and kind of what we're hoping to get out of today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm doing some online teaching and community building also, and really feeling the need for it, and wanting to continue to provide support for my clients while my practice is closed. Also a concern about, you know, what to do when we open back up. I don't need to talk about that. I just want to I have a concern about having a safe and clean environment, and, you know, and I feel like there's just so much mixed information about everything. For myself, I'm almost 100% positive that I had COVID early in the year. And as soon as there are antibody tests that are vetted, I probably go get one. So I'm not so concerned for myself. I feel okay. What part of why I'm here today is my lungs, I can tell, are still not back to 100%. And so I've been noticing what I have is I'm wondering if there's a little bit of scarring. I also have a dryness, and it's also very dry where I live, but it hasn't been very dry. So I know that seems that just hasn't fully cleared up. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Bobby, your turn.
On the screen, I'm right next to you. So I thought you skipped over me and was going to come back. Well, I'm here because I love hanging out with Robert. So that's one reason. And I had COVID-19 in March and the beginning of April. I think that my lung capacity has improved with some of the things that I've been doing and exploring breathing, sound, and some actual aerobic exercise, which has been helpful. But one of the things that I'm noticing is right at the lower diaphragm in the throat, I find that I almost have, when I take a breath in, it's almost like this catch, like something is hanging on right here. And then I had a lot of pain in the lower part of the diaphragm in my back for a number of weeks, which the pain is gone, but I'm still, there's some curious sensations back there that I'm sure is left over. And I think that I can resonate with you, Anne, about wondering if there's scar tissue in the lungs. You know, I had a lot of stuff in the upper part of my lungs throughout the experience. And so I'm just here to explore.
Great. See what we can do here. Thanks, Bobby. Carol. Unmute.
There we go. I'm in Seattle. Yeah, I've had the privilege to be able to work with Robert on Vashon since I'm close, and that has really amazingly changed my life. I've got a lung cancer that left me very short of breath with a surgery that was messed up, and yeah, I have 30 steps coming up into my house, and every day, several times a day. I used to be just panning by the time I got to the top of the stairs, but after working with Robert now, I know what to do. It's really changed my life amazingly. I've started exercising again, you know, can even start doing some aerobic stuff, which is like incredible. So yeah, I can be more thankful to be here. Well, thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Christiana.
Hello, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. I'm just curious about your work because I practice Continuum with Sabine Meads, and she is a great enthusiasm of the work you developed and how you do it. So it was nice because yesterday I went to your site and I saw, okay, tomorrow there's a class online. So it's good for me because I'm in Portugal and it has to be really using these tools. And I don't have any particular question about the breathing. I just feel that we are living in a moment of so many death and rebirth, that for me the breath is really something that resumes that, and all the life is, we can understand life through the breathing. So it's just that curiosity and that feeling of how to die and rebirth better each day, each moment,
Each breath.
each breath. Yes.
No two breaths alike. Each one,
Yes.
Each one is a new lifetime, each cycle. Thank you. Sonia.
Hello, everybody. I'm from Germany. I don't have a Continuum experience, but my friend recommended you, Robert, and this is my second time on Zoom with you. I had a bacterial infection of the respiratory system since the beginning of March. And in the end of it, I started to have a strong reaction to mold in my house. So at the moment, we are cleaning the house from the cellar to the top. And I have still problems with my breathing, especially right here in the middle. It's also a problem of dryness, and yeah, I'm very interested just in to experience the exercises, some of the Continuum exercises maybe, and I was very interested in the part of what you wrote about the tissue of the lungs, so that to strengthen it or to whatever recover or so. So that's yeah, that's my interest, I think. And usually I understand quite well the instructions. Could you explain what prone means?
Proning.
Yeah.
Proning. Well, in an anatomical position, you have a supine position, which means you're facing, if you're lying down flat, you're facing up. And the way to remember that is in anatomy, if you hold a cup of soup, you're supine. You're facing up, and lying down. When you're pronating, you're lying on your stomach.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that's what, and so the medical profession has turned it into a verb called proning, which means putting people on their stomach for breathing.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And while a conversation comes up, just to answer Kathleen's question, the Dr. Pateco, which I teach the Pateco method, always recommended lying on your stomach for sleep if you could. And one of the reasons is that, especially now when people are short of breath and breathing 30, 20, 30, 40 times a minute when they're sick, they're over breathing. There's way too much breath, too much force. And so putting people on their stomach inhibits that lung tissue from opening up and breathing so fast. And it pushes the air to the back body where there is more lung tissue. And so it takes longer to fill up. And so putting people on their stomach changes the rate of breath and where breath moves. And so that's why they're putting it on there. And the most astounding report I had seen was when somebody came in with a saturation level, which is normally supposed to be above 95 and below 98, with a 40 saturation, which means he had practically no oxygen in his blood whatsoever. So he was really close to death. And they put him on his stomach, and in 1 minute, his saturation level went up to 95. Wow. So all of a sudden they started to realize that putting people on their stomach was the better way, and even way before even thinking about a ventilator. What happens if we put them on their stomach and see what happens to their breathing? And so it's always been used in the Pateco method as a preferred way. And when people are on their back, an important piece of information is that most people are on their back with their legs straight out. And when that happens, you lose 40% of your lung function. So already, if you're compromised with your breathing and you now knock it back 40% more, you're really in trouble. And two of the things that happen with that is, one is your back is compressed against the floor or the bed, and so therefore they can't open as well because they are compressed. And the other is because your stomach, your viscera, your liver, your intestines are all pushed up against the diaphragm. And so the diaphragm can't descend and pull the lungs open the way they normally do. So if you have to be on your back, if you put your knees up like if they were over a pillow, like at 90 degrees, something like this, then all that visceral, the abdominal pelvic cavity viscera moves towards the pelvis, and then the diaphragm is freed up. And so you get back most of that 40%, not all of it, but most of it. So a better position is the side if you can't sleep on your stomach or you can't be on your stomach. And they were putting people on their stomach for about 8 hours a day. They were trying to get them on their stomach for about 8 hours a day for recovery. And it was working. So it became a protocol, now called proning. Okay. All right. Ruth.
That was so interesting. I just learned so much right there.
Good.
So I had a few questions, and then I looked over at my table. Are you familiar with these, and what do you think of them? Himalayan sea salt.
I'm not familiar, so I can't put a comment on it.
Okay, it's an inhaler. I'll email it to you.
Okay.
Okay. And then I was thinking, one of my favorite yoga teachers here, Natasha and Christy, they do back breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious on your thoughts of that. My lungs are compromised. They have been, I don't know, I grew up, my mother was a Camel smoker, and I smoked pot for 30 years. And sometimes I think it's more in my throat. But I saw a clean heart practitioner in Denver who came up with like 4 lung things. One was like chlamydia pneumonia. We did all these herbal protocols. And I think I had COVID at the end of February. And so now when I go out on my walks, I get short of breath.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, I mean, I'm in good shape. And it's kind of disturbing.
Sure, of course it is.
So,
Breath is life, and when we can't
Yeah.
breathe, we are looking at the portal of death really closely.
and then those oximeters, the pulse oximeters. I don't know if you read the article in the Times.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that they're pretty accurate?
I think everybody should have one as well as a thermometer in their household kit. Absolutely, absolutely. It's not necessarily an indication, like I said, because the guy came in with 40 and he would have been freaked out. It is one indication, as long as well as in COVID, respiratory rate. Those are the two things that doctors look at: respiratory rate, how many breaths per minute you're taking, and if you're up in the 30s, you're definitely short of breath. And what your pulse oximeter is showing, whether you're desaturated, which means that you're not carrying enough oxygen in your blood to support life. And so that's what the ventilators are meant to do. And there are other ways to get there, like
And then
proning.
I have this chronic little cough that just, you know, take all these herbals and stuff for it. It just,
Well, yeah. Okay, good. Thanks, Ruthie. You know, what the words that come to me is breath is medicine. So we're looking at Continuum to enhance the possibility of how we use breath as medicine here. And that is the key to all of this. And so the other piece that I want to put in here now so I can make it part of my teaching is the most powerful tool that we have for breathing is consciousness. And that breath will always follow consciousness. Wherever you're conscious of, breath will go. And so whether that's in a thought, in an image, in a feeling, in an emotion, or in a body part. If you just take a place that you want to be in your body and you breathe, you will notice, not that you will notice that that part is actually breathing, that's not really the truth, but breath causes movement. And so movement is a primary nourishment of the human body. It's as equally as important as oxygen. And so when we feel the breath move in an area where we put our awareness, like in your back, it's receiving the nourishment of movement. And when it receives the nourishment of movement, it becomes more permeable to what the breath is delivering in terms of oxygen and carbon dioxide and nitrogen. It's the permeability that we're after to allow the flow of a nutrient feed to come into the body. So when there's movement in a place, it's open to being fed. So so it's a simple rule. If you're feeling like you need some breath someplace, be conscious of that place. The next piece is not to try to make something happen in those areas, but to follow it and to recognize, and I'm speaking, I guess, Bobby, this came from your share, that always we want to treat breath in a way that is entering us in a gentle way, which is what we're going to work with today a little bit. How do we gentle breath down and make it a tender invitation, and always, always, always stay under the struggle. So the struggle, if we feel tight in a place, is telling us smaller. Can you breathe underneath this pain, on this struggle? Let me be present underneath this so that I can maybe move through what's above it gently, because I'm now underneath it, and I can maybe begin to expand the volume of it and the capacity of it from inside it, and not push on it, not be forceful. That's another thing they're learning right now, is being forceful with breath is antithetical to healing. So we're not trying to push through anything. We're trying to stay underneath it and let it rise up, the healing rise up from below. Okay, thank you for the questions. Jan.
I think I'm having allergies. All the trees, many of the trees are blooming, the flowers, many have already bloomed. And suddenly I'm having some mucus and sneezing. And my eyes are watering a little bit.
Sounds like allergies.
Yeah, so it's on my porch outside. There's a white covering of pollen, I think. Yeah. I have not done the continuum. I have done a lot of movement through the Aston work, so I thought I could probably keep up.
You will.
I love working with you, Robert, and you're very inspiring. I did my very first Buteyko training with you long ago, and I've always find your ideas inspiring and so on. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jan. Glad you're here. Julie.
I've been doing continuum work for under a year with Bobby and Robert, and more recently, well, since the fall, and more recently, some breathing work with Robert that's been feeling really profound in making changes in some chronic trauma-based breathing disorder or disruption, and just finding it very useful and inspiring and exciting to begin to experience some relief. So just here for a little more.
More relief, huh? Great. I sometimes look away because I have two screens and the person talking is bigger on my screen to my right. Thanks, Julie. Josh.
Hi, everyone. I'm in Mexico City. I just moved here from various parts of the East Coast in the US. And I think I'm really here because I really relish and miss the experience of diving with other folk. It's not something I've had the privilege to do either in the flesh or in the virtual flesh in a long time. And I've actually started leading a weekly group, not explicitly Continuum, but implicitly Continuum. And I have found it's been sort of like the sort of the non-dual sharing and receiving medicine of my week. Like some of you have expressed, there's question on whether or not I have COVID or had COVID. Even after a CAT scan and a COVID test, half doctors think I have it, half doctors think I don't have it. So, and I was only able to get all of these things because I'm in a city where, you know, healthcare is cheap. And if you have American money, you can get, for the price of a copay, I got a CAT scan and a COVID test. It was unbelievable. So I have started working with Robert to investigate breathlessness, which just came almost spontaneously. It's like I just got asthma, and it's compounded because I'm in a polluted city and a stressful time. So for me, it's about breathing as much into the physical reality of what's going on as well as the unknown. And Continuum for me is sort of like the proof is in the pudding, because I was with Emily Conrad in the months before she was dying, and I'd never seen a human being face anything that, like death or with such courageousness and fearlessness, at least on the surface. So I've been pretty afraid. So I Continuum seems to be a gateway into working with that.
Yeah, it is. I think that, you know, Emily's, some of those of you know Emily, but the major question she always asked was, how many times have you died? Which she got from a mystery school of, you know, ancient teachings. And it didn't really mean that you actually physically died. It just really meant that you removed or allowed yourself to see the transparency of your identities and your personas and ways that you hold on to reality in a fixed way. And the more you can let go of the fact that things are not fixed and things are mutable and adaptable and can live with the changes, it takes away some of the fear, because you know that things are always changing. And that's what's so profound about the breath. What I said before is that each breath is a fractal of our life and death. We never, a lot of you have heard me say this before, but we never know if we're going to get another breath at the end of the last one. We take that for granted. And so the real deep contemplation of the reality of breath is to drop into that reality of the emptiness at the end of a breath and waiting for the impulse inside of you that calls forth the next breath, whether it's your chemistry or whether it's your heart's desire to be alive. Breath is called forth in you and you will breathe again. And so manipulating it or trying to do techniques that enhance it are useful, like any emergency medicine, but really basically we're looking to return the breath to its natural rhythm where you allow the exhale to complete itself and you allow the inhale to arise when it's ready to arise. And that depends on your habits and use of breath throughout the day and throughout your life. So if any of you are into the Radiant Sutras, which is a 5,000-year-old doctrines, they have a lot of good information about breath. It's worth pondering at the spiritual level. So when I ask breath what it is that it wants me to pass along, it's the first thing that it really speaks to is that it needs a body that's relaxed, soft, and permeable so that it can move through it. And that the way that it does that is that it invites us into a sense of belonging on this earth, in that we are in relationship to the gravitational force of the earth. It's something that none of us can avoid. We're all subject to gravity. And gravity has two forces. It has a downward pull and it has an upward lift. And both of those forces are represented in the breath cycle. That when we exhale, we are letting go of the buoyancy that air provides inside of us, because air is leaving our lungs and we become less buoyant. So we are a little more dense and a little bit more aware of our weight. And when we are more aware of our weight and moving towards the earth as we descend like an air balloon, we become more aware of what is underneath us that is holding us both up and down at the same time. Where are we landing when we exhale? And that becomes obvious to us as, like I said, as we exhale, we can feel that weight and we can feel it coming up from underneath. And what I want to say about that is that in my work with another Continuum teacher, Carol Burstein in Maui, who has been a Jungian for over 40 years, she created a map around what is it that creates safety for a baby. And that safety for a baby is what we need for our entire lives to continue to create a sense of safety that will allow us to be permeable and breathe and feel like we can be in the fullness of our own capacity for breath, in our own psyche and in our own heart. And those four things are nourishment, like a baby needs nourishment. And so if we extrapolate it to as an adult, we need to be nourished and feel nourished. So in this particular conversation, we need the nourishment that breath provides, both in the fact that it moves us, and when we feel like we are in our full breathing capacity, something that somebody mentioned yesterday is the increase in vitality. When we're nourished, we feel vital. And you can extrapolate that to an intimate relationship with some person. When you feel like you are nourished in the relationship, it lifts you up. And the same thing is true with breath. When breath is a partner, it's a relationship. You are in relationship with your breathing. And so when you feel nourished by it, it can bring you vitality. The next one is support. Every baby needs to feel like it's supported. And we feel like we need to be supported, not all the time, but we need a sense of we can receive support, whether it's from a loved one, whether it's from a friend, or whether it's from gravity. When we land in gravity and feel ourselves weighted on the earth, grounded, if you will, but resting there, not unlike a cat and a dog, resting and letting ourselves rest our body in that support, we are getting supported. We feel supported, and that opens breath up because it's receiving support. The third one is limitations, that all babies need to know what the limits are, as do we as adults need to know what our limits are. So if we relate it to breathing, what we mentioned, a couple of people mentioned here, some of the limits that you see are places that your breath doesn't open up. it tells you your limits. So you have to breathe within that limit. You cannot push it open, but we can expand those limits and understand a greater capacity when we can work with the breath and find it moving us and acting as medicine. And that's what that's what doctors are finding now, is that that's why I put that in the flyer about recruitment. They're looking for people to be able to recruit more of their lungs in breathing when they're trying to heal from COVID. And I remember one of my best friends in this lifetime was dying, and I was with him on the table in the hospital bed. The nurses kept saying, "Can you breathe more? You're breathing too small, too shallowly," which is a lot of us who do that. And what causes that shallow breathing are places that we hold and the places we feel constricted, where we are not relaxed, where we are not softened, where we're not opened up to allow the movement of breath to enter into us. And we hold ourselves from fears, from beliefs, or whatever, but that holding of the tension is what limits the capacity of breathing. So we're looking to open up from that tension. And the last one is every baby needs to feel.
Robert, before you go on, you didn't mention the benefit of limits for the baby.
The benefits of limits for the baby. And I never really understood limits, I have to admit, but COVID has taught me limits. I thought everything was possible for me. I never understood I couldn't do anything. But with COVID coming around, I can't go out of the house. I can't do this. I can't. Whoa, I actually kind of like this. It narrows my choices. I no longer have to be so grandiose about my choices. It narrowed my choices. So the benefit of limit is to not overbreathe in this particular case. And not to think I can just breathe as big as I want, or I can take that big deep breath that everybody says, take a big deep breath and breathe in through your mouth and blow out through your mouth. No, that's beyond the lungs' capacity. It's too much force. So knowing how to stay inside of what feels like I'm filling to my capacity right now, whatever that capacity is, leaves me feeling satisfied. I get satisfaction by living within my limit. So, and also when I can breathe within in a limit, there's a sense of completion. I'm living right to my limit. I'm complete, and I can feel satisfied. But if the limits are never, I can never be satisfied because I never know what. Well, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do this, or maybe I could be this way, or maybe I could be that way. Well, I have too many choices. So the breathing body, in its way that it lives in you at the moment, is your limitation now. And can we expand that limitation to increase the capacity, but still know that at some point we're going to reach the end of the limit of how much inhale we can bring in. So we're looking to increase that capacity of that limit right now today. Okay, Melissa? Thank you. Thanks for the question. And the last one is protection. And breathing does protect us, but how we breathe is also part of the protection. The nose is the guardian of the lungs. It protects the lungs. So nose breathing is what's important in protecting the lungs from pollution, from imbalancing the respiratory gases by mouth breathing, keeping the air conditioned both temperature-wise and humidity with antibacterial molecules. And also, they are now beginning to write that nose breathing may have an opportunity for antiviral effects by the way that it produces nitric oxide, which you can't get through your mouth breathing. And so they're starting to see the reality of that, which came about actually in SARS in 2006 when they tested the influence of nitric oxide through nose breathing as an antiviral and showed that it was antiviral. But even if that's not the case, at least if we breathe through our nose and we are inhaling something, the body goes on alert that something has entered and needs to mount a defense if it's not immune compromised. If it's immune compromised, it really probably wouldn't matter. But if it does go right into the lungs, you have less of a forewarning. The body has less of a forewarning. So those are the four things that are important. So today we're going to focus on both capacity and recruitment, gravity and space, and nitric oxide production. Those are the things that I'm looking for Continuum to provide for us today. So any questions before I go on? I hope that was useful. I think it was. I know it was useful. I can see people taking notes. I figure when you take notes, it's got to be useful. Okay, so this came to me, and it's been useful, and it is 5,000 years old. And some of you have done this with me and heard me teach this before. And we'll do a couple of practice rounds of different things, and then we'll just go off and dive in and do it. But maybe as you're just so what I like about what I'm teaching today is this is accessible anytime, anywhere. You don't have to get on the floor. You can be walking down the street, you can be driving your car, and all of a sudden you recognize, wait a minute, my breathing doesn't feel as full as it needs to be. It feels like it's not nourishing me. I'm caught in a pattern that feels like I'm too tense in it. I'm over breathing. I notice that I'm not settled in myself, that I'm in my mind too much, and I'm thinking about and worrying about it. I want to return to my body as quickly as I can to allow my body and embodiment to be my primary focus in a particular moment, because I feel safer there than in my carryings on in my mind, which never gives me an answer that I can use unless I come from my body first. So it's Sa and Ha. So some of you know this with me, and some of you may not. But it's a real simple. It's a simple, soundless breathing exploration that allows the lungs to bring the air into the body, rather than you trying to bring your air into the body and not knowing, well, is this enough breath? Is this too much breath? Is it too little breath? Letting the lungs decide based on, as they open the capacity, how well it feels to open that much without pain, and that there is perhaps more capacity than I am currently aware of if I allow my lungs to do the breathing. And so Sa and Ha are just tricks of consciousness, if you will, for the body to redirect the movement of breath from me breathing in to letting the lung, to me getting out of the way and not using any of my normal musculature to get breath in, to let the lungs open me up. And so the other piece of that that's really important is that Sa and Ha allows, let me just get this picture up for you. I'm going to share a screen here just so you can see this. Allows the air to travel through these three openings, the upper opening, the middle opening, and the bottom opening. And those three openings in the nasal passageway behind the vestibule of the nose correlates to three different places in your nervous system. The bottom hole is more towards your brain stem and your instinctual body. The middle hole is your limbic system, your emotions, and your heart. And the top hole is your bliss point and your cognitive thinking. So everybody has a pattern of breathing, and some people have a pattern of breathing low, some high. But Sa, when it's pulling the air through the nose without your effort, lets it pass through all three holes, which brings into energetic alignment your brain, your heart, and your gut. So, and I like this picture also because it shows the wave-like movement, even in a still picture, of your airways. It's not the usual picture of a dead tree. It's taken after somebody's died, but these move. These are waving in you. So it's very non-linear and more in this dimension because, sorry, I should do it this way. And in this dimension, because those holes spiral the air, which is why when I said, when we were doing earlier and we were in movement, I said you can move when you breathe, nobody went like this for breathing. You all sort of rocked yourself. You followed breath into a rocking, more non-linear movement. Why? Because breath is moving in you that way. And so that's what inspires this non-linear rocking, comforting movement, is the way breath moves in you. Breath is the instigator of movement in your body. You're not breathing, you're not moving, right? And I wanted to show a couple of more pictures while I have them up. I wanted to show the pictures of the size of the lungs, so you can see that they are above the clavicle, even though this person's hand is raised. And they come to the bottom of the rib cage, a rib basket in the front, and all the way down in the back. This is the space here. This is what they're trying to recruit now. In resting, your lungs are this way. When you are really filling into capacity, you will open up into here. And I wish I could find it, but I'm just going to tell you, and maybe you can get the visual image. I'm a swimmer, and I liked watching the Olympics, and I forget the swimmer's name. I have to research it again, from Australia, who was one of the world's fastest swimmers, along at the same time as Michael Phelps. And they had an underwater camera on him in one of the races. And it was coming towards the end of the race, and it was the most marvelous moment that I've ever seen in a swimmer. But he was coming in for the last little bit of the sprint, and I watched him open up all the way back here. You could see his lungs just all of a sudden just open up to access that extra space to give him the push to run, to go just that much faster. It was, what did I just see? He just knew how to open that up. So that's what we want to do. We want to be able to open that up.
Robert?
Yeah?
Are the empty spaces below the pink there, are they considered to be the lungs?
Yes,
as well?
they're considered lung space. They're the serous membrane goes around all of this.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a good sitting position, but if you're going to be sitting, so that you're not collapsing your stomach into your rib basket. And this is an important piece too, that the tongue needs to be at the roof of the mouth. So we're going to explore a little bit of that also. And so these pictures, so this is another way with Saha that you can reduce the airway resistance. We want to reduce airway resistance to be able to recruit more lung space. And so this is where the tongue belongs, here at the roof of the mouth in a curl, right, like that, with the teeth just a few millimeters apart, lips touching loosely, and we see the airspace here. When the tongue is down from the roof of the mouth and more at the bottom, the airspace gets reduced. So we want to keep that tongue up there, and we'll work with that today too, okay? And so please stop me if you have any questions. And I just want to show you these pictures of the ribs. So I want you to think about, most of the time we see ribs, we see them this way. And when we see skeletons, we see them this way, but they all have twists and turns in them. They are not linear. You'll get a copy of these slides, Jen. Okay. They're not, and this picture was done in the 1700s by anatomist Berzelius. And I love that he put the wave motion in the ribs, because all bones have wave motion, and they all are moving through in a non-linear way. So you want to keep in mind that the ribs are not just something that locks the body into place. Okay, I think that's all the pictures I wanted to show. All right, yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to look at my notes here. So let's just try a couple of minutes of Sa and Ha, and then we'll do another little piece, and then we'll go off and dive. So just as you inhale, the way to use Sa and Ha in a silent way is to think it. All you have to do is think it, because you will hear it in your head. So one of the ways to allow breath to move through slowly as the lungs pull it in is to think slowly. So Sa becomes a really long, elongated Sa, and you're thinking. And you should notice that the air is actually traveling more through your nose rather than you looking for air here. And if you elongate the thinking of the sound, notice if the inhale lasts longer, goes slower, and that you actually are increasing the capacity because it's coming in a gentle way that is not tightening any muscles around the chest, but allowing the chest to soften to accommodate the increase in the capacity of the lungs receiving air. And as you exhale with ha, it's the same thing. It's an elongated thinking of ha, no effort at all. The lungs now are not having to use any of their internal musculature to open up, but are relaxing their musculature to let the air gradually just leave the lungs without any effort on your part. And yeah, well, and having the patience with ha to see, can you go beyond what you normally think is your exhale, the end of your exhale, and wait and see that there's still a little bit more. If you're patient enough, you drop down just another little bit as you finish exhaling. And I said breath follows awareness, so you also simultaneously, and this is a multitasking piece, you're simultaneously at the end of that exhale, noticing where you're connecting to support. If it's on your bottom or on the bottom of your feet or the back of your back, or if it's against the chair, but just noticing, not you having to look for something, but what arises in your awareness about where you're making connection to the earth, where you're resting on the earth. And keeping that awareness of where you're resting on the earth during the inhale with sa, so that you feel like the inhale arises from the gravitational support and it's giving you the lift that gravity provides from its deepest descent. And each exhale, you may notice a different quality of support, or it may just be the same one, but it feels new in your awareness and your consciousness. And so it's not just that we are whole body, I'm just going to keep talking while you're doing this, it's not just the whole body that's receiving support, but you also may notice, and you can spend your lifetime with this, that we, as in an erect posture, we are stacked with support. So in other words, if you have your tongue at the roof of your mouth, your palate is resting on your tongue, or you may notice your shoulders resting on your lungs, or you may notice your hands resting on your thighs if they're there. But internally, things are supporting each other. So it's a gradual releasing to wherever you feel something below is present, to let what's above soften down into it. So you may feel these incremental releases of tension somewhere, or an impulse to move a little bit with your head or other places. But you're unwinding a tensional pattern that is your pattern. And what you want to notice is that when you release the smallest amount of tension, what happens to the inhale in its increase in capacity, as well as effortlessness, the increase in a sense of buoyancy when just even the smallest amount of tension is released. Those tensions are the resistances that inhibit breath. And the further development of this is you may notice places in your body, like I'm noticing right now around my eyes are being held a little bit. And so I'm keeping that in my awareness when I inhale. So I feel breath moving that tension and softening it a little bit. So not only am I bringing awareness of gravitational support, but I'm also bringing into awareness at the end of my exhale, whatever sensations arise, as something that's worth keeping in my awareness when I inhale. This is the body intelligence guiding, drawing your awareness to places that need the nourishment of movement. So gravity first, and then any sensation that arises. And so the overall way to think about this is that I'm breathing with what arises in me that my awareness is drawn to. So I'm breathing with, not into. Even if I start to notice I'm sad, great. If it's an emotion, breathe with an awareness of your sadness. And the sensations that go along with that. If it's joy, breathe with joy. If it's a thought, breathe with the thought. If it's an image, breathe with the image. Breathing with whatever shows up in awareness moves it. And if it moves, it helps shift an identity that might say, well, it's, oh, I'm always stuck there, or I'm always tense there. You have to lose that identity because you notice there's movement there now. I'm not always not stuck there. So for those who felt pain in a certain area, see if you can bring that into your awareness and breathe with awareness of that place that feels tight, constricted, painful. And let the breath come up from underneath there. It's wanting the best for you. And if something releases and moves and it gives you a longer inhale with more capacity, let it be there. Breathe bigger, but slower.
Robert, you shared that, it's Melissa.
Hang on a second, Melissa. Let's just finish this and then you can ask the question, please. So this is a bit of a rehearsal. So to make a transition from here, I'm going to invite you into 5 different things. Just to make a transition a little bit to the outside world. Find one taste. Find 2 smells. Find 3 hearings. 3 different sounds. Find 4 touches. Either touch from the inside or use your hand to touch a place on your body. 4 different sensations of touch. And as you let your eyes drift open, find 5 visual images. Take your time. Okay, great. That's just a little rehearsal we're going to play with. Melissa, you had a question?
Yes, you suggested that we inhale and feel the support as we inhale.
You feel the support when you exhale. You land in your support, and then keep that awareness of support while you're inhaling. Because breath needs that relationship to gravity, and needs to know that it doesn't have to leave the gravitational field to fill up. It likes to fill up when it's fully connected to gravity. It feels safer that way. Because the pattern for a lot of people is I breathe out and then I have this habit of breathing. I go, well, I'm going to lift myself up to breathe. No, I'm going to stay really rooted and let my body fill up without me adding any movement to it. That sense of being filled for me is incredibly gratifying. Yeah, Anne.
Are we going to get a video of this?
We'll get a video of this and you'll get a copy of the slides. So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Are we going to get the recording of this?
Yeah. It's being recorded. And I'm sorry if I didn't put it on speaker view when I showed the slides. So some of you got the slides in a smaller version because speaker view puts it in a large version. But you also will get the slides accompanied with a recording. There'll be an attachment. You can look at the slides more detailed then. All right. So I'm going to put this back on gallery view while we're talking so I can see everybody. But remind me when I demonstrate to put it on speaker view. Any reports on that? Any additions? Anything you want to share that's going to open it up for us to pay more attention to something that you noticed that nobody else is noticing that enhances this for us? Yeah, Josh.
So this is maybe a general comment about breath and continuum in general, but I've noticed specifically with Saha is a gateway to this. And it's both a sharing and a question. I was a yoga teacher for almost a decade before I stopped teaching yoga to just dive into continuum. And one of the shifts was shifting from from controlling to allowing. And the interesting thing is when we do Saha, and sometimes in other moments in continuum, I find all these controls happening. By that I mean spontaneously, there's ways in which the things that I used to teach as formal things in pranayama sort of happen on their own without me doing it. And I don't know if that's like some sort of embedded somatic memory, but I actually find that I'm not willing. I find that really assuring. I mean, in this experience, I was able to get back into places through these like little, not holds that I was doing, but these little holes that seem to like almost like divert a stream and let the air just like.
That's right.
And it was willful. It wasn't like I wouldn't be doing that, you know.
No, anyway. I don't know how you can distinguish it's willful. When you go to Saha, you're turning it over to the lungs. Right. And so places that are needy are gonna call it.
Okay.
That's how I see it. And so it becomes automatic. I don't think Saha most of the day. I just go, wait a minute, let my lungs do the breathing. And I allow them to breathe. It's not a technique, it's just allowing the lungs to do the breathing. What I mostly enjoy, and this comes from a long dive, is following sensations and breathing with sensations. Here's how I conceptualize that. As I breathe with sensations over a period of time, each time I go into the exhale and there's a different sensation, whether it's support or whether it's another part of my body that just comes into my awareness, I don't go there, it just shows up as sensation. You go, oh, it's drawing my awareness, and I breathe with that awareness. I contextualize that and conceptualize that as my body intelligence calling for places to receive the breath. And by breath following awareness, it's bringing that place in my body to my awareness. Breath goes there. And so it continues to call in different locations ongoingly, which is inviting my body to open up fully over a period of time, so that eventually what happens is all of a sudden I can feel it's a drop down and a disappearance of me, where all of a sudden all my body is now breathing me completely, and I'm in a totally different space, and I am now the witness to the phenomenon of my body breathing, but I used this awareness to get me in there. Just like looking through a candle in meditation, what do? We focus our awareness on the candle, and we're supposed to be able to go through the flame and open up into the grander picture. And the same thing here. I'm just focusing my awareness on places my body is calling for breath, and eventually I just disappear, and it opens me up completely. Okay, anything else? Bobby, you got a question there? Thank you.
I want to can I say something about pranayama?
Sure.
What John had mentioned?
Sure.
You know, I've practiced yoga for many years too, and now I combine continuum and yoga. And one of the things that I think about in pranayama is, you know, pranayama is just a snapshot of somebody's breathing experience, and then they put it into a system, right? So what's to say we're not revisiting an exploration of something that someone just put into a more of a closed system because it said, aha, this is it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I just find that refreshing to know that within whatever it is I'm exploring, that things start to show up that could have been someone else's experience that I'm now experiencing, but it's not static, it's a moving state.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's why I like the idea. That's why I'm particularly focusing on the body intelligence calling my breath in a way through sensation, not trying to make it go someplace, but what is showing in my awareness. And if I breathe with that awareness, breath goes there. And that's my body intelligence calling it forth.
And, you know, I want to talk more about my personal experience. Having shared that I still have some sensation here and in the lower part of the ribs, I started feeling like an undulation between the two in the breath, like they were somehow in this movement dance with each other. And there was some level of wisdom happening that I haven't really grasped yet. But just trusting that process of these two places really coming into an undulatory dance of fluid was really good. And I can actually feel some change right here as I talk, because one of the things that has been happening for me is I have this sensation when I talk and I don't now, which I appreciate. So
That's great. Oh, thanks for the report. And it really leads me to the next step that I want to say is that when we breathe into a space and a space becomes aware to us, like you just did, it defines the space. Like we have a sense of the boundary of that space, the territory of that space, right? And so once we have a picture of the territory of that space, we can actually move within that limitation of that territory of the space. And so that gives us an opportunity to say, oh, I feel myself in there. What would it be like to just kind of move in a non-linear undulatory space in there? And then if I take another breath and then I find a different space, then I ask, what's the relationship between these two spaces in a non-linear movement way? And that's why I kind of, anyway, never mind. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for describing that for me and leading me into that part of the conversation. Just another piece to help you with this. I can see that 2 hours is a minimal amount of time. So any other reports? Because we'll just go back into doing this piece. And the way to, the other thing I want to say, the way to enhance a sense of, it's like, well, I'm breathing and I don't really feel any sensations. Well, the way to enhance that sensation, to make it more obvious to you, is to make a sound. And in this particular case, we just want to use a real simple sound of hum, a hum. And the reason we're using hum is because the studies that show that when we hum, we increase the production of nitric oxide in our nasal passages. And as we increase the production of nitric oxide, we're increasing a relaxing of the system, a relaxing of the blood vessels, a relaxing of the airways, and an increase in antiviral potential. So in other words, I breathe out, I breathe in, and I and I notice what's vibrating. And so that, whoa, I've got a lot of awareness now of my head. So when I breathe in, I'm keeping all of that awareness of where I just felt the vibration in my consciousness. And so when I breathe in, wow, my head's breathing now. And so now I can kind of move my head a little bit more from the inside, not an idea about how to move my head, but from the feeling of, oh, wow, I'm inside my head. And so, so the next time I do a hum, I'm using my head as a resonant chamber, so the hum shows up in a different part of my body. And so now I go, okay, I'm going to breathe with that. And now I feel the undulation there and think, well, how does my head and that relate to each other? So now I'm building up into a wave. And so if I'm on the floor, I can kind of really start to move with undulation. I'm not going to get on the floor right now. I don't want to spend time, but I can really start to move my whole body because the breath has awakened the internal space to find movement in. Does that make sense? Vagal tone also with hum, yes.
Vagal stimulation, but I wasn't aware of the nitric oxide.
Yeah, but now you are.
Okay, so it increases the nitric oxide.
Yeah, 20 minutes of humming increases nitric oxide production between 7 and 15%, or 15 times, not percent, 15 times. And so we're not humming continuously because we don't want to get into a pattern of we're humming, feeling the interior world, breathing with it, moving with it, and then when we finish that impulse, breathe, I make another hum, and that increases the potential for internal sensation as well as de-densifying the tissue to make it more permeable to allow breath to move through with movement with much more ease. And so we begin to, with this and practicing this over and over again, begin to go, well, I know the places that I really hold myself tight. And so immediately when I start breathing, I go, yeah, let them all soften down. I know where I'm holding. And my breath opens up more easily. And so that would be, so if I went into the hospital, that would be the first thing I would do. It's like, I know how to keep myself quiet and open up my breathing capacity. That's what I'm learning how to do. Do you notice that when you breathe with Saha in a slower way, that you can fill up slower and that more of you fills up in more dimensions? Yeah, I got 1, head shake. 2, great. All right, so let's take some time. It's 10:22. We've got a half an hour here. We can get on the floor and dive. So we're going to, Ruthie?
So when you're humming, how do you hum while you're breathing in? I can't do
You don't. You breathe in.
Okay.
With awareness of where you last felt gravity or felt sensation, and you then hum. And track, since the hum is the exhale, you're tracking the sensations that the vibration of the hum produced, so that when you breathe in, you're in that space. And so that space is now receiving breath and becoming permeable to breath. And then you can move with it. And wave motions that are continuous, the foundation of Continuum is allowing the body to move in wave motion. That's what opens up flow and permeability. And that's what we want in the long run, is to have our breath be permeating the tissue and have the tissue be receptive to permeability, because wave motion is moving fluid, and the fluid is the circulatory system of our body. And so the more fluid and more circulation we've got going, the less, hopefully, as an extrapolation, the biggest thing that's going on with COVID now is that is the stagnation of blood, or the extra clotting of blood. Blood clotting is now becoming the #1 problem with COVID. And so maybe keeping ourselves fluid maybe can inhibit some of that. I don't know. But I'd rather be in a flow state than in a constricted, fear-based state. Aoife, did you have a question? No, I just saw your hand up. Okay, so you can do this sitting or not. So let's take a half an hour, saha, a little humming, a little watching where your body is calling for awareness and breathing with awareness where you notice in your body and just moving breath by breath through this within half an hour. And if you want to, like I said, if you want to elaborate the de-densifying of the tissue, then let that movement of breath show itself in a bigger way, in a nonlinear way. And if you want to be on the floor, it's fine. Just do not be on your back. Be on your side, be on your left side, and then try it on your right side so that you get a different sense of the body. Be on your stomach, get on all fours, don't go on your back. We're trying to open up the back ribs, as some of you have experienced. We don't want to push them in compression through being on your back. Questions? Don't worry about knowing the sequence, just follow kind of the general conversation. Yeah? All right, so I'm going to turn the recording off, so it'll be paused during this half an hour. And two, just taking your time to come back out and turn your video back on. Take some time here in the last few minutes to see if there's any discoveries that you want to speak to that will enhance all our learning, as well as any questions you may have. Yep, there's the time. Okay. So if you're not ready to come back out, you can stay hidden.
Melissa here. I feel like my body really just loved and opened up. And I feel like there's a lot of tightness in the back of my lungs that just kind of got bypassed in a way.
So in other words, there's more room in the back of your lungs now?
No, it's almost like the back of the lungs are kind of tight.
Oh, I see.
And I'm maybe aware of that, but yet I feel like I have all this, you know, I wasn't moving, but there's a sense of breath in my extremities and all over. But when I actually go to feel my lungs, it's almost like,
Okay, good. Well, you can try putting some more sound in there, some humming, like direct the sound into the back of your lungs and then breathe with that. I just noticed when I was doing it, I got a little a directive. I thought, oh, wait a minute, there's some interesting resistance there. Let me put a sound there. So I get a little more directive with my sound. Yeah, Anne.
See, it was actually the exercise that led up to this last dive. I could feel the relationship of the whatever I was thinking was scarring and that dryness with a pattern in my nervous system that feels like PTSD. Like from that happened probably when I got sick. I was by myself. It was during the holidays. And I intuitively knew I had to isolate because I was so sick. So yeah, it was interesting because I hadn't, even though I'm working with that all the time, every day, I just hadn't really, for some reason, hadn't connected. Just, you know, I was thinking of it more like it's just, even though I don't feel incredibly, you know, worried, I do have some worries. I was just associating it with the stress of what's going on in the world. But it feels like it's definitely has to do with when I was sick.
Which of course is not separate from the stress in the world, but nonetheless, it's really an embodiment of the PTSD, really an awakening of the embodiment of where the PTSD lives in your tissues.
Right. Well, this gave me a much more specific way of being with it, because I do feel like that specificity is that, yeah, it's like a way of honoring having an accurate, empathetic awareness and then being able to actually address it accurately. So
And breathe, and breathe with it. Yeah, it's beautiful. Great. Beautiful. It's true for all of us. I mean, I know that too plays for me too. When I get frightened, I was I told the story, I was in a dentist chair for some work, and I just feel so frightened, and I just had to look, where was that living? And it was so much in my spine. As soon as I got the location, I could drop in there and breathe with it and open it back up. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Aoife, how you doing?
Hi. Yeah, I'm breathing a fair bit easier than I was when we started, but just to say, I don't know if I missed something, but I thought you were going to talk us through whatever that last half hour was.
Oh, okay.
So I was a bit, where is he? And then I just sort of led on from the exercise we did before and just moved around a bit with my breath. And I wasn't really sure what I was at because I haven't done Continuum before, but was there something I should have been doing that I wasn't?
No, you did fine. If you're feeling breathing easy, if you're breathing easier now.
Oh yeah, no, I am. You know, I'm still a bit caught, but yeah. So that was distracting me for a good while. What are you meant to be doing? And then I just thought, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I didn't.
No, it's called a little bit of a dive time. You're diving into your internal landscape, and you're doing it by yourself without distractions. So you give all your attention to you.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah,
My son ran it a couple of times, but yeah, I just sort of went with that flow for a while and stopped questioning it, and it was a lovely few minutes. So thank you.
Good. If you're breathing better, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I am.
Good.
Thanks.
Right, good. Carol, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. That was pretty profound. I haven't done it that long, which I probably should have been doing, but I have a numb leg and foot from an old back injury, and it was so clear how badly that needs to be, or how much it's asking for breath from the humming.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking outside my window while I'm doing that, and I don't know, it kind of made me kind of sad. I think I have an element of PTSD too with everything I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
And it just brought up those sad feelings of just how difficult it's been.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm feeling really reflective and in a really interesting spot. So I also have back pain that was been hurting me. I hurt my back a week ago, and breathing, it was clear that too, you know. And as I'm breathing into my back and noticing the humming, the back pain disappears. So.
Yeah, so I just really, I don't know, I'm just a little stickler on this. It's breathing with the back, not into.
Oh, okay.
Because into it feels too like I have to do something. I'm just breathing with something, and it's just a lot smoother, gentler.
Okay.
And it's more inviting.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let me go to Sonia, okay, Anne? All right.
Okay, thank you. I started with the humming. I just love humming. I'm a great hummer, but it made the irritation in the tissue worse. So as well, my nose was blocking, and in my throat, and also here, everything felt very irritated, and I had to cough and stuff. So I stopped it after a while, and then switched to the Saha, and that made it a lot easier. So and then something opened up again, also in the nose, and everything started to relax and calm down a bit. And yeah, I wanted to ask if you have an explanation for the humming. I mean, I have an allergic reaction at the moment to this mold in my house, and yeah, maybe it brought it up more. I don't know.
I have a very specific, when I was doing the practice in the humming too, I noticed that there were certain areas where the hum was interested in being, but I had to modulate the volume and the intensity. So some places where it felt like this is hard to get into and it does feel irritating, I got a lot smaller. Like, you know, I tried to bring it just like I did with the breathing. How can I get gentler and smaller so that I'm touching it in a way that doesn't irritate it? And if I can't really do that, then going off to the Saha is a better idea. So
with smaller, you mean like softer? Or?
Softer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, finding a modulated tone that actually feels like this is the right, what's happening, what I'm feeling about the irritation is asking for something different than I'm giving it, perhaps. And so I'm going to make it smaller and gentler and see if I can get, touch it without causing it irritation, but meeting in a way that it feels like, oh, it likes this. And if I can't find that, then go into something else like the Saha is fine.
Okay.
Robert, with using the humming, should I feel it in my body? The pitch seems to vary and the softness, where some places in my body it's harder to feel it than others.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, sometimes you can be directive and other times just I hum and where do I feel it?
Oh, okay.
Where does it show up? And then I breathe with that. And then once I breathed with the place that the humming brought my attention to, that part of me is now more open for the resonating of the humming. So my humming is going to change on the next hum because I'm using more of the resonant chambers that were not available before. So it's going to move to a different location. So I'm just following it around. And if I find it, and usually it's my awareness of something that says, well, what about this place? Well, let me try it here, So I just let my awareness bring me where it wants to bring me without going looking for how it's affecting me. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Josh, and then back to Anne.
Almost intuitively, I did it with the Saha, and the humming came on its own. And what was neat about that is I actually feel like this mini dive was like an encounter of the limitation. Like there's an ordinary experience of the limitation, but then there's this sort of extraordinary experience of the limitation, which had a quality of suspension. Like I actually was with almost like what would be the precipitation of a cough that didn't become a cough. It was almost like it was like a limit of breath, but almost like and then it would just stay there, and then the inhalation, the exhalation would come. And it was like in many ways very uncomfortable, but it was like a way in which like I was in that level of restraint or limitation in a way that was actually with it. Whereas like now I'm talking and I'm like, oh, I'm just short of breath, and it like does a whole thing. Like there was no thing happening. It was just the actual fullness of the limitation and experience.
Yeah, so when we're short of breath, I think, it really modulates the speaking. It's like I'm short of breath, so give myself a chance to get some breath before I speak the next words and see what volume and modulation my breath has to be with what I have the capacity for right now. In this moment, if you're sick and you're short of breath and you're panting and you're going to the doctor, that's a different story. But if you're trying to work with whatever, how is the short of breath? You could ask the question, not to be smart about it. How's it going to serve me right now? Well, it gets me to slow down. Maybe it gets me to be a little more conscious with my inhale to see how much inhale I can use to breathe for my next exhale and speaking. Just working within the parameters of that limitation right at the moment, which I appreciate what you said, that, you're living with the limitation as opposed to being bouncing up against it or being angry about it. Thanks, Josh. Anne?
Something along the lines of what Sonia was also saying was that, so when the hum was a little higher up, I had a similar sort of, it's as if it couldn't penetrate, it couldn't make its way. And so then I softened it and I actually allowed the sound to come from deeper inside, but it was gentler. And then what I noticed was it actually, it allowed my body to utilize the excess nitric oxide somehow, or maybe you can explain this to me, because before when we started, I was very relaxed, and so I had so much excess. It was hard not to yawn. I wasn't bored. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so relaxed from these 3 minutes of whatever you had, when you were having us do that Saha exercise. And so then when I laid down and I started to do this and started the humming, I realized I didn't have that response anymore. So I'm just wondering if that humming somehow, allows the body to take that in and utilize that extra nitric oxide.
That's the idea of it. And nitric oxide opens up circulation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing. And I love what you're saying, because it does speak to, was my experience too, is that sometimes you can't go directly at it. So what you just spoke about was going indirectly, like you were looking for other resources in your body to support what you were trying to do. Mm-hmm. And that's a wise thing to do, is to think, well, wait a minute, I can't really make the sound because I really don't have enough of my belly engaged in my breathing right now. And when, somehow the body intelligence takes me there. It's not like an idea of like, I should do this now. No, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I need more breath down here. Oh, when I have more breath down here, it seems like this has now gotten easier to do. It's a little more indirect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think the practice of this is to spend more time in it. It wouldn't be necessarily just 20 minutes, which is we're limited in this 2-hour program. But, those of us who've done more Continuum, it wouldn't be unusual to spend, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, just being with movement and breath and sound at a much slower pace, and really following the inner guidance. And
all day, voting for all day.
Well, yeah, and if you did an all-nighter, you might do it for 3 days. So who's to say? But with a couple of contextual ideas about what you're looking for, and then letting yourself be in the land of discovery with breaks. Like the open attention, like just what's I've been stimulating my body with sound and breath and movement. How is it making an impact into my tissue in my regular moment of just doing nothing, and seeing, oh wow, things just feel really different in me, and my perception of reality starts to change as well, and things feel different. So, I think for me, in this goal of this class was to really engage in some ways that give you a way of increasing capacity, so that if you are not feeling well, you know how to at least work with capacity. And so if you're sick and you have limited capacity, that's great. You can work within that limited capacity, and try to find spaces that can open up to maybe give you a little bit more recruitment of lung tissue that will help you. And I don't know, Bobby, I don't know, you don't have to answer this, but that's kind of what you spoke to with me. When you couldn't breathe here, you had to find other places to find air, and some of your skill allowed you to do that. And so that's what I was offering here, was skills to find other air breathing areas when some are shut down. I'm just reading Christina's note here. Well, great. Thank you, Christina. Bobby, yeah.
I appreciate you pointing that out, and I'll just share it again because this is a different group. When I was really sick, my doctor wanted me to go to the emergency room because I was having difficulty breathing, and I think that just riding that exhalation and holding the exhale out for a little while, and then letting my inhale come on its own, was what kept me home. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that. And I also want to say that I do have to sign off right now, because I have something else I need to do at 2:15. So I've appreciated being with you all, and thank you, Robert.
You're
love
welcome. Thank you, Bobby. Right, and so it's time for all of us, unless there's something burning that somebody needs to speak to. And I'm available. You're going to get the recording. If you have questions or you want to talk to me or write me, you can send me questions, and I'm available for this, and we can have a quick conversation if we need to. You're saying goodbye, Ruthie? Is that a wave goodbye?
I don't know if anyone's interested in this, but what I went to is in one of my yoga classes, we have these chairs that we got at Costco that they have there, Natasha has there. And we go over the back of it. It's kind of a pronating thing. We call it flying. And then you use the chair and, you breathe and you open your whole back body. And so that's kind of where I went. And it felt
Great.
great.
And yeah, one of the things I did have in mind, and maybe I was thinking about doing a series of these, working on a physio ball, both on the front and on the back, to open up this way, open up this way, and then lie on the ball in the front and lie on the ball on the side and just working. So you want to, the thing that is I like about one of the languaging of Continuum is working with elongations, so that we're lengthening through ourselves. It's different than stretching. Stretching usually means I'm closing, opening one side and closing another. But elongation means I'm reaching through completely all the way through my body. So I'm elongating, and elongating, especially on the side on a ball, will help those side ribs open up a little bit more. And
can we do that?
Huh?
Will you do that?
Will I do more classes? Yeah.
On the ball.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing to do also is when you're doing the humming and you're doing the saha, you can also put your hand on your rib basket and just breathe with that, so that you can actually get to feel your ribs moving, because you want to have an awareness of that rib basket and how it opens and how it moves when you breathe. So knowing that is like when you bring your attention there and your awareness and you feel the ribs moving, they are pulling the lungs open. So you want to really, have a sense of your own ribs. And so the more you can touch your ribs while you're doing sa and ha and humming or on a ball, gives you a sense of, and putting sound right into the ribs. We'll do some of that another time. It's good to keep those ideas of what your ribs are actually doing when you're breathing. Okay, well, it's been great to be with you all. Like I said, if you have any questions, I'm a bit of a madman today, but I've enjoyed it with you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Adios.
Okay, hi to Helen.
I will. Bye.
You. Bye.
Bye.